New Jersey Democratic Senator Bob Melendez is resisting calls for his resignation after being charged with several corruption-related federal offenses. U.S. Department of Justice prosecutors accuse Melendez and his wife of accepting hundreds of thousands of dollars in bribes in exchange for the senator's influence. This is the second time in the last decade Melendez is facing corruption charges. Prosecutors say the bribes included gold bars, cash, home mortgage payments, and a luxury vehicle. Melendez denied the accusations and responded to calls for his resignation, saying he is, quote, not going anywhere. Neama Rahmani is a former federal prosecutor and the president of West Coast Trial Lawyers. Neama, great to see you. So we'd love your perspective on this. What is your reaction to this string of indictments?
Well, it's certainly a bad look for the senator, but let's not forget he's beat these charges or similar charges once before. And if you're looking at the U.S. Attorney's indictment, it really is a speaking indictment. I mean, we're seeing this more and more, obviously, in the Trump cases, where the indictment contains pictures of the evidence seized in the case, the gold bar, the cash in the pockets, as well as the senator's own words saying that congressional officials, they're not supposed to intervene on behalf of private interest or interfere in the judicial process.
So speaking indictment, is that an indicator of, an exceptionally strong case that prosecutors are willing to share some of what they have? And if that seems strong, then the other things they must be really rock solid?
Well, you're dealing with very politically charged prosecutions here. There are folks that are going to argue that, the senator was just acting on behalf of his constituents. These were his friends. These were his wife's friends. Again, this is the playbook from his previous trial, which ended in a mistrial, but it was really 10-2 in favor of acquittal, with the judge dismissing the charges. So I expect the senator to follow that same approach and argue that this is what members of Congress do.
So Melendez likely learned from that mistrial, as have prosecutors. So in this case, what will prosecutors need to do to prove that these gold bars, the money, the cars, the mortgage payments were indeed gifts, bribery gifts, substantiate these corruption charges?
Well, it's interesting how the U.S. Attorney charged this case. They didn't charge the substantive offenses like bribery or honest services wire fraud. They charged different conspiracy counts. So prosecutors in this case, they're really focused on those text messages, those dinners at the fancy restaurants, to say there was an unlawful agreement here between Melendez, his wife, and the three co-defendants to participate in these bribery schemes. So it's not necessarily that the bribery was actually committed, but that they agreed to do so. So those text messages, meetings, and any witnesses there are going to be critical.
Okay, you had mentioned Melendez learned a thing or two, which is why he perhaps preemptively put out the statements that he did. And in these charges, Melendez is accused of secretly aiding the government of Egypt. And in a statement, Melendez says prosecutors, quote, misrepresented the normal work of a congressional office. So does that sound like a salient defense that, of course, he would have interactions with the government of Egypt or any other because of his position?
Well, it is a possible defense, but hopefully the Department of Justice has learned. And, this raid was executed last year, so quite some time has passed from the raid to this indictment, and the senator's lawyers have been meeting with Department of Justice officials to try to stave off this indictment. So there was a possibility of a deal, but I think this time around, the Department of Justice is going to be a lot more careful. That was really a black eye to lose that case. So hopefully, at least from a former prosecutor's perspective, the same thing won't happen this time.
All right, Neama Rahmani, great to see you. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.